Hi everyone, I'm Sue Hillyard, and this presentation is being recorded for EA Zoom meetings. Welcome to my talk on eclipses, Saturn-Pluto, and Chariklo, which came out of my realization that the asteroid Chariklo was in the mix of the run-up to the big Saturn-Pluto conjunction of 2020 for almost 2 years, entering before the point that Saturn went into Capricorn. I had synchronously heard a couple of astrologers mention her, and when I found out that she was Chiron's wife, went on a quest to learn more. Many of my recent talks have included the topic of eclipses, which is one of my passions. So upon discovering that there was an eclipse days before the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, both of which are on their own south nodes and with Chariklo too, my topic for today revealed itself. And then discovering that Chariklo is approaching her own north node in Capricorn added even more juice to the story. By the way, I instinctively pronounced her name Chariklo, like Chiron's, because she was his wife, and also found that same pronunciation when I Googled it. But Melanie Reinhardt says it Chariklo, which also has a lovely ring. You can choose for yourself which you prefer. So let's start first with the eclipses for this year. As I had mentioned in my last talk, this past summer's lunar eclipse at 24 degrees Capricorn, 4 minutes, would make a callback to the 8/23/1939 Mars stationary direct at 23 Cap 56, noting that on 9/1/1939, World War II started. I had said, this makes me a little uneasy in that it looks like Trump is trying very hard to start World War III right now. However, the underlying planetary configuration was a lot different then from now. For instance, Pluto was square the nodes then, as was retrograde Mars opposed that Pluto, which had just gone into Leo. However, that said, Pluto is now conjunct the moon's south node as well as his own south node, so we certainly could be revisiting the past. Hopefully, it is to heal into the future with a reminder of that time being all that is necessary, so cooler heads will prevail. In giving that previous Mars retrograde talk, I asked, a year from now, where will we be? Well, now Saturn is within orb of its conjunction to Pluto, which occurs at 22 Capricorn 47 on January 12, 2020, and that Capricorn lunar eclipse has taken place. This planetary configuration in Capricorn suggests an underlying theme that seems to be playing out. That is, the ongoing saga of corruption in the patriarchy. Much evidence of this is being brought to light for us to heal. Let's look at a few current events around the time of the July eclipse. On July 14, 2019, Trump tweeted that progressive Democratic congresswomen should go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came. The day of the lunar eclipse, across his 5th and 11th houses, opposite his 11th house Venus-Saturn conjunction, he denied that his previous tweets made toward several Democratic congresswomen were in any way racist. Then the next day, the House of Representatives voted to hold Attorney General William Barr and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in contempt over an administration decision to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census. On 7/25/19, Trump had the now famous phone conversation with the newly elected Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, that has resulted in the impeachment inquiry being initiated. During the call, apparently Trump repeatedly pressed President Zelensky to open an investigation into Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, who Trump perceives to be his major rival in the 2020 election. Next day, the Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision that Trump may use military funding for construction of the border wall. And the day after that, Trump drew major criticism for his tweet describing Congressman Elijah Cummings' Baltimore, Maryland district as a disgusting rat and rodent infested mess. This is from an article in Rolling Stone entitled The Madness of Donald Trump. Evening, August 22nd, 2017, a convention center in Phoenix. It's Donald Trump's true coming out party as an insane person. It looks like the same old Trump up there on the stage. Same boxy blue suit, same obligatory flag pin and tangerine comb over. Same too long reddish power tie swinging below his belt line like a locker room abomination. Earlier this year, there were efforts to make Trump stop wearing his suit jackets open. Designer Joseph Abood said buttoning up was a very visible way of showing he knows how serious the job is. But Donald Trump doesn't take advice, not even the gently benign kind. What is interesting about this article, and here's Trump's chart, you see the date of the Great American Eclipse that was conjunct his Mars right here was the day before the date that was referenced in that article, August 22nd. I had previously noted that in addition to the 2017 and 18 eclipses across the horizon of his chart and involving his Mars, the asteroid Chaos had turned stationary direct on March 5th, 2019 on 23 degrees Gemini, 10 minutes, exactly conjunct Trump's 10th house sun with progressed Uranus not far from it. Transiting Jupiter and Chaos perfected their first opposition just after that on March 13th at 23 Sag in Gemini. And in July, their second opposition at 23 degrees and 46 minutes was on April 30th. Then there was a lunar eclipse in his 5th house opposite his 11th house, Venus-Saturn, in July. The final Jupiter-Chaos opposition will be in a couple of weeks on November 15th at 26 degrees Gemini and Sag. While Chaos is not still within a degree of his sun, it is pretty close. This will be followed by the Saturn-Pluto conjunction coming in January, also in the 5th, opposite his Saturn in the 11th. I had commented, considering that these two activations take place in his house of children, and the fact that Junior and Ivanka have placements that connected to the Great American Eclipse, it will be interesting to see if the kids become implicated in all of this of his drama. So here we are with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction fast approaching. So are there any comments or questions from anybody right now? Okay. Let's now look at the January lunar eclipse, which occurs a couple of days before the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. I notice that Mercury is out of bounds. Partile conjunct the Capricorn sun and opposite the eclipsed moon. So we might anticipate some wild news around then, perhaps pertaining to the ongoing saga of corruption in the Trump administration. And you may notice Ceres right in the middle of the pack up here as well, which may bring up what has abducted us and what we need to feel nurtured at this time, and also how we can nurture those around us. The other notable part of this major emphasis in Capricorn has been the asteroid Chariklo, or Chariklo, as Melanie calls her. Right here. She has been dancing back and forth between Saturn, Pluto, and the south nodes of the Moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto for the last couple of years. So who is Chariklo? Melanie Reinhardt says, the details of Chariklo are very scant in the classical mythology, which leaves plenty of room for us to sense into her energy for ourselves. Perhaps we can imagine her being the one who cared for Chiron during his long life, dealing with a wound he could not heal, and continuing to act as a healer and mentor for others. Eventually, his fate resolved when he changed places with Prometheus, and Chiron was immortalized in the constellation of Centaurus. We are not told what became of Chariklo. Did she return to be a water nymph as her life had begun? Did she join Chiron in his celestial home? Does she live on as an eternal helper in another dimension? Mark Andrew Holmes writes that asteroid number 10199, Chariklo, is one of the Centaur class of outer system asteroids whose orbit crosses the orbits of the gas giants. Chariklo is between Saturn and Uranus. It has an estimated diameter of 300 kilometers, making it one of the largest centaurs, an astrological year of 62 years, 255 days. It was discovered on February 5th, 1997 at 7:51 p.m. Mountain Standard Time at 6 Leo 03 by James Victor Scotty at Kitt Peak Observatory near Sells, Arizona, and is named for a nymph or minor goddess of Greco-Roman mythology, a daughter of Apollo who was the wife of the wise centaur Chiron and the mother of his daughter, Okiro. Here's the Chariklo discovery chart from opaastrology.org in an article called Chariklo, Wife of Chiron by Melanie Reinhardt. She says, we see Chariklo in Leo in the 11th house, and no fewer than 6 planets in the 6th degree of their respective signs, including Jupiter applying to a conjunction with Uranus by just a few arc minutes. Looking more closely, we see that Chariklo actually completes an almost exactly perfect 6-pointed star configuration involving 7 planets. These complete stars are quite rare and usually only approximate. Chariklo sits in the 7th degree of Leo, for which the Sabian symbol reads, the constellations of stars shine to man's common humanity and to all enduring archetypes. Holmes continues. So Chariklo, known for her grace, gave birth to people who told the truth when it wasn't always pretty, and sometimes paid for it. His keywords for Chariklo are interesting, including gazing into the future, questioning reality, investigation, imagination, cynicism, skepticism, speculation, obsession, beauty, glamour, grace, glitter, gee whiz, limelight, adoration, celebrity, charisma, role-playing, fascination, social hierarchy, insecurity, boundaries, alienation, need for affirmation and acceptance, need for selectivity about associations, conditional acceptance, acting on the basis of first impressions, superficial appearances, or initial emotional responses. Holmes also adds that Philip Sedgwick had this to say about Chariklo. The wife of Chiron probably functioned as a sacred prostitute in the matriarchal temples. In our society, she refers to social boundaries, especially those of a cross-gender or sexual nature. She examines interactions to determine the intent of the scenario prior to judging it or responding emotionally. Chariklo represents healing interpersonal discrepancies on all levels. Studying boundaries from the aura or energy point of view offers the insights of Chariklo. She also asks for a momentary pause before taking an aggressive response to any relationship injustice. She heals by redefining the concept of boundaries, forgiving inadvertent transgressions. Melanie Reinhardt also offers that in attuning to the qualities of Chariklo and how they express in people's lives, we can notice the following: a gift for creating or holding sacred space. This can be instinctive or through learned skills. A temenos, container, or alembic within which the work of soul is facilitated. Ability to witness. With Chariklo strong in a horoscope, we find doing the often invisible work of caring for those who are in transition, being born, giving birth, dealing with illness or dying. Chariklo is a midwife, literally as in physical birth and death, or metaphorically when we die to an old identity or way of life. A deeply yin energy out of which new yang is born. Recognition of the silent power of this profound receptivity. As a character, we find Chariklo representing a reservoir of compassion, devotion, discernment, and presence. Being dutiful, consistent, supportive, forbearing, kindly, and nurturing. So Melanie summarizes her signification as to bear with, abide with, create sacred space, accompany, and witness. Melanie also suggests that we see if we can detect this energy deep within us, for it is Chariklo who will accompany the intense pressure of the forthcoming Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which will be within range from January 2019 until October 2021. Perhaps she will mitigate the intensity or teach us to let go of reactivity and instead bear with our feelings so that clear action can follow, or shed light on Saturn-Pluto process itself, which may already be echoing back, reminding us of late 1982 when the previous Saturn-Pluto conjunction was exact. Here's the chart for that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 1982 at 27 degrees Libra 36. Here. You may notice that Mars was out of bounds at that point. And the coming lunar eclipse on Christmas Day will be close to that out of bounds Mars. I wonder if the eclipse could be helping to wrap up and signal the ending of that previous Saturn-Pluto cycle. For me personally, the conjunction occurred a day before I sustained an injury that changed my life forever. The only exact aspect it made down here on that day was a quincunx to my north node. Although there were other transits, like the Sun and Venus on my natal Mars. And Chariklo was opposite it in Taurus. I don't show Chariklo here for lack of space, but in my natal chart, she is 1 minute from a conjunction to Ceres right here in my 5th house. And now my Sun and Venus have progressed right here to the point where Jupiter was on that day. And my Mars has progressed to the point where Mars was and to where that eclipse is going to be on Christmas. In the years since that day, I've learned much about my health by pursuing the path of alternative forms of healing. I continue to recover and receive insights about the purpose of that injury, and regularly say that it has put me on my soul's intended path, which otherwise might never have happened. Melanie asks, what led up to that 1982 time for you, and what happened afterwards? Can you see, feel, sense life threads connecting you to that period of time? Are there processes which need resolution and closure? Or perhaps something is returning that was buried by circumstance? Or something maturing for which we feel a deep gratitude? Then she says, remember, clear, scintillating diamonds are formed deep in the earth from carbon, as it is gritty black coal. Saturn-Pluto is a gritty black sort of combination, sometimes in mood, thought, feeling, or life situation. With the help of Chariklo, we can perhaps embrace this pressure and explore these darkly luminous states while remembering the light of the diamond. Are there any questions or comments?
So did you mention the orbital period for Chariklo was about 62 years?
Yes.
Okay, so it orbits, is it past Uranus?
It's between Saturn and Uranus, yes.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit slower than Chiron, yeah.
Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, from your research and observations, what do you think would be just a few meanings, like the core meaning for Chariklo?
Well, I'll probably talk a little bit about that, but it seems to me it's about holding space and grace.
And not reacting too quickly?
Yes, exactly. And yes, and thinking about what your reaction is going to be before you actually do it.
And so where is Mars on the 12th of January 2020?
Let's see.
Probably in Capricorn. Everything's in Capricorn.
In Sag.
In Sag, 5 degrees.
Yeah, yeah, right up here.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yes, so any further questions from our audience? So Sue, Chariklo is right on the birth chart point of Chariklo is right on my Uranus. So I guess I would take heed of that description to perhaps slow down, think before I act kind of thing. What do you think? It's
yeah, I would think so. And the fact that that it formed this beautiful star,
yeah,
kind of puts all of that part of the star, into your Uranus, it just yeah, I would say that that you could definitely embody this archetype.
I love that star. It's a Star of David.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, made up of 2 grand trines and I don't know how many sextiles.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 altogether, I think. Anyway, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and all the oppositions and yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes.
And all of that energy in Aquarius too.
So the discovery point was Leo.
Yeah, she was in, yeah, yeah.
There she is up there in the 11th house. So that's where my midheaven is, close to
Yeah,
that point. Oh, that's really fascinating.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
I mean, she was only discovered in 1997, so we're just starting to learn, a lot, you know, and observe and correlate.
right. Absolutely. Very fascinating topic. I love it. So anything else you'd like to share with us, Sue?
Oh yeah, we got
Okay,
more. We
fantastic.
got more.
All right, all right. I will mute myself. Thank you.
So for anyone who's curious, this is from true-node.com/EPH1, which is the asteroid ephemeris. Here are the positions of Chariklo every 5 years from 1900 to 2050. And her orbit is similar to Chiron, so she periodically spends more time in some signs than others, but it looks like approximately one sign every 5 years. And it also appears that her north node is slowly moving from the end of Capricorn into Aquarius, as you see down here. And then when we look at monthly increments starting with 2018, it looks more like her nodes are, dipping into Aquarius and Leo um, during certain months of the year. And this is the input screen from TrueNode. You can see that I chose geocentric nodes here. And there is some debate about geocentric versus heliocentric, but we are on Earth. And these are what Jeff Green has taught as in his evolutionary astrology, is that using the geocentric nodes. But if you use heliocentric, you can see that they are more static and already in Aquarius and Leo down here, and more steadily in those signs. So here's the chart of the upcoming Saturn-Pluto conjunction with all of that energy between the south node of Pluto, right here at 20 degrees Capricorn, and Chariklo right here at 24 degrees. I find it very interesting that whereas Mars was out of bounds for the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 1982, Mercury will be out of bounds for the lunar eclipse on January 10th, and still just barely out of bounds when Saturn and Pluto meet on January 12th.
Sue, would you be able to explain to us what that means, please?
Out of bounds?
Yeah, Mercury out of bounds, yeah.
Well, out of bounds is when a planet goes outside of the normal latitude and longitude, or the declination, the declination of the sun's bounds is what they call it.
Yes.
And
yeah.
when that happens, the astrologers say that that planet then is out of the control of the sun, and is therefore out of bounds, and can act erratically or differently.
Uh-huh. Wow, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and for Mercury to be there, sometimes, there are people with Mercury out of bounds can have extraordinary thoughts, and communication can be erratic. It can be, there can be a scale of, as you know, we can look at it as good and bad, but it can be, you know, consensus or, you know, non-consensus.
Sounds a bit Uranian to me, like an unaspected planet.
Exactly. Yes.
Mm,
Yeah.
very interesting. Thank you, Sue.
Sure. Chariklo moves slowly. Her orbit is 62.4 years, and it takes this long for her to make the trip all the way around through all 12 signs, or a little more than 12 years per sign on average. Zane Stein comments that since Chariklo was the mythological wife of Chiron, perhaps we should study the Chiron-Chariklo cycle for insights. The last time the two bodies were in conjunction was in 1949, when they joined 3 times. The first was February 13th at 8 degrees Sagittarius and 1 minute. Second, May 30th, 5 Sag 45, and the third was on September 3rd, 1949, 3 Sag 37. And here are some more observations from Stein. He says, representing Chiron's wife in mythology. Will that be reflected in her actual astrological meanings? Just like Chiron, she acts as a link between Saturn and Uranus. How will her linkage differ from Chiron's? And she is the largest, brightest centaur, more so than Chiron. What does this mean astrologically? Chariklo aspects them to be prominent in individual. Chariklo aspects seem to be prominent in individuals who take a step into the future. It may be through science. Pierre Curie, who studied the various types of energies, had a close Chariklo sun conjunction, the greatest source of energy for this planet. Alexander Graham Bell, who studied ways to communicate with the deaf and who invented the telephone, had a close Chariklo conjunct Mercury, planet of communication. Stein also says that unless otherwise stated, a close aspect will be one with an orb of less than 1 degree. And Stein continues, but I've also found that it seems to be very active in individuals who closely associated with science fiction. One of the earliest works of science fiction, The New Atlantis, was written in 1626 by Sir Francis Bacon and contains such futuristic elements as genetic manipulation, telescopes, microscopes, telephones, factories, aerial flight, and submarines. Bacon had Sun at 12 Aquarius 18, opposite Chariklo 11 Leo 44, both squaring Eris 11 Taurus 16. And if the commonly accepted chart for him has a valid birth time, Chariklo is opposite the ascendant at 10 Aquarius 51. A huge name in science fiction movies is Steven Spielberg. Steven absolutely loves sci-fi, as you might be able to tell with the close Venus at 19 Scorpio 14, conjunct Chariklo 19 Scorpio 44 in his chart. Jupiter at 17 Scorpio 56 adds to the picture as well. All 3 bodies fall in his creative 5th house. Stein also says that sci-fi authors abound with close Chariklo aspects. As he states, the sci-fi connection really hit home when he began to study the people involved with the 4 Star Trek television series. Gene Roddenberry's Chariklo is closely square his sun. Jonathan Frakes was born with Chariklo rising at 23 Sag 51 retrograde, and his ascendant at 19 Sag 36. Stein suggested looking at the Chariklo aspects in the charts of most of the other regular cast members as well. I will end here with Elizabeth Warren's chart. She's currently one of the Democratic Party's leading candidates to go against Trump in the election for president in 2020. We don't have a time of birth for her, so this is a noon chart with a natural wheel. She was born in June of 1949 with a very close conjunction of Chiron and Chariklo in early Sagittarius, opposite her Mercury and Mars in Gemini, and square her Virgo Ceres right there. It will be interesting to observe and correlate what happens when the new moon next month in Sag falls right on her Chiron Chariklo, and also in May of 2021 when a lunar eclipse lands there as well. In June of 2020, she will also have a new moon solar eclipse directly on her Sun-Uranus conjunction, a month before the DNC in July. Could she emerge as the nominee, or possibly in some role as the individual who helps us take a step into the future, as Zane Stein suggested? Can she show us how to take a pause before taking an aggressive response, thereby helping us to heal interpersonal discrepancies, as Philip Sedgwick mentioned? Or will she exhibit grace and charisma, per Andrew Holmes? Will she, as Melanie Reinhardt described, be the one to hold space for our transition to a more compassionate nation? I say, let us hope. So are there any questions or comments?
Sue, so what do you think is going to happen with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction?
Oh, sure, put me on the spot.
How do you perceive it?
I see it in a lot of different ways. I think it's, well, a lot of things. My Mercury square Uranus has all these things, all this input coming in. I think it's different for everyone because they're generational planets, but if they're aspecting personal planets, then it becomes personal. And I think it's different for everyone because everyone is on a different path and on a different evolutionary path. But I think it is I think after the fact, like many years later, like as we're looking back on the 1982 one, we may look at it as one of those blessings in disguise, or but I think it's an opportunity for transformation. I do see it as the all of this upheaval in the patriarchy, the hierarchical, governmental structures everywhere are being transformed. They're all of this corruption is being exposed for us to look into and heal. What do you think?
Well, for me, it will be aspecting, that whole stellium will be aspecting 3 personal planets in a T-square. So I have no idea whatsoever. But I'm just looking at the planets on that day, the 12th of January 2020. We've got Mercury.
You want me to put it back up?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. And if anyone in the meeting wants to share their thoughts on the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, please do go ahead. So, Sue, yes, it's very close to my Sun, Moon, and Mars in a T-square.
Wow, that's a lot of emphasis on
It's a lot. Usually I don't worry about transits too much, but this one just seems overwhelming.
Well, you know, the other thing about this is that they're slow moving, and we have been in the thick of this for years.
Right.
You've had it aspecting, you know, your Mars, your Moon, your Sun, you know, and so it's been a process, an ongoing
Yeah.
process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, whereas, sometimes, depending on, how, where we are in our evolution, sometimes we need cataclysms, sometimes we just need a slow, steady push. So,
Funnily, interestingly enough, I don't see it as cataclysmic for myself. I
yeah,
think I will be able to get through it, and I love the advice, that you gave about Chariklo, as do not jump in too quickly, but pause and don't react too quickly. I think that's great advice for me personally.
yeah, I think it's great for everyone, and I think it'll be nice to see people stepping up, maybe who have her prominent in their chart, being the example, because there's so much of the opposite of this going on.
Yeah.
It's been so Mars, and what I thought was interesting also was that the previous Saturn Pluto Mars was out of bounds. So the initiation of that conjunction was with Mars out of bounds, which is, aggression, and, people just acting however they damn well please. And, you know, it's gotten progressively more so, I think, over the years, to where, it's the Wild West out there now, and especially in politics and government and corporations. It's like they've taken over, and they do whatever they want.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that is Capricorn.
Excuse me. So, any other questions from our audience or comments?
I was just thinking, as far as, kind of what Sue was just mentioning about, governments wanting to do, just doing what they want to do, but that's only because it's been allowed. And I would think that the Pluto and Capricorn, especially with that, conjunction to Saturn in its own sign, is calling for, getting to the bottom line, questioning, where everything is on the table. And I think that's the reason we've gotten to this point, because, you know, people don't want to question it, what's been going on. And people, just like in relationships, how they say people will treat you how you allow them to, to treat you. And this is the same thing with the collective, I think.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Yeah, and what I thought, the reason that I wanted to do this talk is because I found it so interesting that, I mean, Chariklo started over here. She went into Capricorn before Saturn did, and she's been weaving in and out, in between all of these south nodes, and in between all of the planets. She's gone, from one side to the other, and she's coming out on the other side of this. And I believe she goes into Aquarius, which is where her north node is, before Pluto does. But she kind of leads the way.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
This chart has the ascendant on the galactic center, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah, I did set this one for Washington, D.C., so, we could see how it, and it does. I mean, it has all of that stuff, you know, rising, you know, coming up to the woo.
Yep, that's a great location to use. It is a hotspot on the geodetic world map because the
Yeah.
east coast of USA correlates to Capricorn.
Ah, okay.
Mm. And I like that Mars is in Sag as well. So, you know, the focus on natural law and all those daemon souls, you know, perhaps they will come forward. And, you know, that will be a stronger voice, especially if that Mercury is out of bounds.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just slightly out of bounds, which I think is good because it's like, you know, like maybe a little bit of daring to speak up.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. I mean, Mercury has just gone retrograde today, 5 hours ago.
Right.
And it's interesting that we're looking at this chart and, you know, and just going as deep as we can into it.
Yeah. Yeah, because
So,
this is going to be the next 35 years.
oh,
You know, this is the Saturn-Pluto conjunctions happen every 35, 37 years. So, you know, this is going to be, you know, what we're looking at for the. I mean, the world is changing. There is no doubt about that.
did you mention how what's the, whoops, sorry about that. Did you mention the what is the word I'm looking for? What is the cycle of Chariklo? And I'm probably butchering that really bad.
You know, that's why I said, you know, you choose. It's Chariklo is how I instinctively pronounced it because the ch as in Chiron, but then, you know, I heard Melanie Reinhardt say Chariklo, and I thought, oh, that has a nice ring too. So, you know, she takes 62 years to go through all 12, 62.4, I think it is, years to go through all 12 signs.
So Sushi's classified as a centaur?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Any idea how many centaurs we have?
I don't remember.
No, I don't know either.
I don't remember.
Mm.
But she's the largest.
Mm. I'm just thinking also honesty is going to be very important at that time here at 12th January 2020. Mercury will be conjunct Pluto, new phase, and Mars will be in Sag, and the ascendant is in Sag. So honesty is going to be so super important to speak the truth courageously. So let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, it's, it does not appear like it's going to be a smooth ride.
Mm,
But I think ultimately it'll be, you know, well, it always works out for the best, you know.
absolutely. So do we have any more to say, Sue, or any final questions from our audience? Sue, any final thoughts?
No, thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed putting this together, as always.
So thank you so much for all of the great detail that you've provided and all the research, and you know, it's fantastic. So thank you from all of us, and we're looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
All right.